I found the texts on a Tuesday. Not some dramatic Friday night. Not after a suspicious phone call. Just a random Tuesday morning while I was making his favorite breakfast, turkey bacon, scrambled eggs with cheese, the way he liked them, slightly runny. My phone was dead, charging in the bedroom, and his was right there on the counter, lighting up with message after message. I wasn't trying to snoop. That's what killed me the most. I wasn't that woman. I trusted him completely. But when you see a name you don't recognize, Simone, followed by last night was everything, you don't just look away. You can't. My hands were shaking as I unlocked his phone. The password was my birthday. Isn't that ironic? He used my birthday to lock away his betrayal. The messages went back 4 months. 4 months. Photos. Videos. Plans they'd made. Places they'd been while I thought he was working late or meeting clients. There were messages about me, about how I was too clingy, how I didn't understand him anymore, how he was just waiting for the right time to leave. The egg spatula fell from my other hand and clattered against the tile floor. The sound echoed through our kitchen, the kitchen in the house we'd saved 2 years to buy. The house where we were supposed to raise our kids. The house where I'd painted every room myself because we couldn't afford contractors yet. I heard the shower turn off upstairs. I had maybe 3 minutes before Damon came down, smelling like the expensive cologne I'd bought him for Christmas, ready to kiss my forehead and tell me he loved me before heading to another day of lies. 3 minutes to decide who I was going to be. What would you do? Would you get angry and yell, or would you turn a blind eye to all this and continue your marriage? Please specify in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more stories and like the video. The old Janelle would have confronted him right there. Would have screamed, cried, thrown that phone at his head. Would have demanded answers while he gasped and promised it meant nothing, that he'd end it, that he loved me. But something cold settled in my chest as I stared at those messages. Something that had been building for months without me even realizing it. All those times he'd made me feel crazy for asking questions. All those nights he'd come home late smelling like perfume that wasn't mine, convincing me I was paranoid. All those moments he'd made me apologize for having feelings. I carefully placed his phone exactly where it had been. I turned off the stove, and I walked upstairs to our bedroom like nothing had happened. "Morning, baby," Damon said, coming out of the bathroom with a towel around his waist, water still dripping from his fade. God, he was beautiful. That's what made it worse. 6'2", skin like dark honey, smile that could light up a room. Everyone loved Damon. He was charming, successful, the guy everyone wanted to be around. And he was destroying me piece by piece. "Morning," I said, my voice steady. "Breakfast is ready." He kissed my forehead, the same forehead he'd kissed 1,000 times before. But now I knew it meant nothing. "You're the best, you know that?" He grinned, getting dressed in the walk-in closet. "What would I do without you?" Probably exactly what you're doing with Simone, I thought. But out loud, I just smiled. That was September 14th, the day my old life ended. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to how it all started because you need to understand, I wasn't always this woman. The woman who could smile while her world burned. The woman who could plot and plan while serving breakfast with a smile. I used to be soft. Damon and I met at a barbecue in 2019. My cousin's husband's birthday party, one of those big backyard cookouts where everyone in Atlanta shows up. I was 24, fresh out of college with my healthcare administration degree, working as a coordinator at Emory Hospital and barely making enough to cover my student loans and rent. He walked in wearing all white, linen shirt, crisp pants, fresh J's, looking like money. Because he was money. Even then, his real estate business was taking off, and everyone knew his name. Damon Wright, the man who could sell a cardboard box and make you thank him for it. He zeroed in on me immediately. "You look like you don't want to be here," he'd said, walking up with that smile that should have been a warning label. "I don't," I'd admitted, sipping my drink. I'm only here because my cousin threatened to disown me if I missed another family event. He laughed. I like honest women. Everyone here's trying too hard to impress me. You don't even care who I am, do you? Should I? Oh. That's what hooked him. I found out later that Damon loved a challenge. Loved women who didn't fall at his feet immediately. And I genuinely didn't care about his money or his status. I was tired from a double shift, annoyed at being dragged to a party, and completely unimpressed by his peacocking, which made him want me more. We dated for 6 months before he asked me to move in. Everyone told me it was too fast. My mama said, "Baby, a man who moves that quick is either running towards something or away from something." But I didn't. Listen, I was in love. He made me feel special, chosen, like I was the only woman in the world who mattered. We got married at the courthouse a year later. Small ceremony, just family, because Damon said he didn't want to waste money on a big wedding when we could use it for our future. I wore a simple white dress from Nordstrom Rack and thought I was the luckiest woman alive. For the first 2 years, it was good. Not perfect, no marriages, but good. He worked long hours building his business, and I worked long hours at the hospital. We'd come home exhausted, eat takeout on the couch, and dream about the life we were building. The house we'd buy, the kids we'd have, the empire we were creating. Together. I handled all our finances, paid all our bills, managed our household while working 50-hour weeks because Damon was too busy with clients. I meal prepped his lunches, picked up his dry cleaning, made sure his mother's birthday gift was perfect. I became the woman behind the successful man, and I did it gladly because I thought we were a team. But somewhere around year 3, things shifted. He started coming home later, started being on his phone more, started having attitudes over nothing, like if dinner wasn't ready when he walked in, or if I asked him about his day, or if I wanted to spend time together on weekends. "You're always nagging," he'd say. "Can't you just let me breathe?" I'd apologize. Constantly. I'd apologize for having needs, for wanting my husband's attention, for expecting him to be present in our marriage. "You're too sensitive," he'd tell me. "This is why I can't talk to you about anything. You take everything personally." I started seeing a therapist, thinking maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was too needy, too emotional, too much. Dr. Harrison would listen to my stories and gently suggest that maybe, just maybe, my feelings were valid. But I couldn't hear it. I was too busy trying to be the perfect wife. The fights got worse. He'd stay out until 2, 3 in the morning, then gaslight me when I asked where he'd been. I was with clients. "This is my business, Janelle. You want me to succeed or not?" I was at the gym. "Since when do I have to report my every move to you?" I stopped by my boy's house. "What? I can't have friends now." And every time, I'd end up apologizing for not trusting him, for being insecure, for making him feel controlled. That's what people don't tell you about manipulation. It's not always obvious. It's not always mean words and raised voices. Sometimes it's subtle. A sigh when you ask a question. A tone that makes you feel stupid. A way off turning every conversation around until you're the one apologizing for bringing up your concerns. I lost myself in that marriage. The confident woman who didn't care about impressing anyone became a shell, who walked on eggshells, constantly trying to avoid the next fight, the next cold shoulder, the next punishment, for daring to have needs. My friends started pulling away because I always canceled plans last minute. Damon would decide he needed me home, or he'd start a fight right before I was supposed to leave, and by the time we finished arguing, I'd be too emotionally drained to go anywhere. My mama noticed. "Baby, you don't smile like you used to," she'd said during one of our phone calls. "That man treating you right?" "Everything's fine, Mama," I'd lied. Because admitting it wasn't fine meant admitting I'd made a mistake. It meant facing all those "I told you so's" from people who'd warned me about moving too fast. Work became my escape. I threw myself into my job at Emory, taking on extra projects, staying late, volunteering for committees. At least at work, I was valued. At least there, my opinions mattered. I got promoted to administrative supervisor, then to assistant director of operations. My salary nearly doubled. And the more successful I became, the more distant Damon grew. You think you're better than me now? He'd snap when I'd mention my achievements. You care more about that job than you care about your marriage. Maybe if you were home more, I wouldn't have to find other ways to occupy my time. That last one should have been a neon sign. But I was so deep in the fog, I couldn't see it. So yes, that Tuesday morning when I found those texts, I'd been slowly dying for months. Maybe years. I just didn't know it yet. I went to work that day like normal. Sat through meetings. Reviewed budgets. Smiled at colleagues. And inside, I was screaming. Every time my phone buzzed, I wondered if it was Damon, if somehow he knew that I knew. But he texted me. The same stuff as always. Love you, baby, with a heart emoji. What do you want for dinner? Like nothing had changed. Because for him, nothing had changed. He'd been living this double life so long, it was normal. Easy. Comfortable. I left work early, claiming a headache. Drove to my best friend Keisha's salon in Buckhead. She took one look at my face and locked the door behind me. What happened? I told her everything. Showed her the screenshots I'd taken. Watched her face go from shock to rage to that specific look Black women get when we know it's time to handle business. If you told your friend about such situations, what would be his reaction? How would he approach you? Let's discuss in the comments. If you like my story, you can support me by liking the video. Subscribe to the channel for more. You leaving him, she said. Not a question. A statement. I don't know. I need to think. Think about what? Keisha grabbed my shoulders. Janelle, that man is living a whole second life. You really gonna stay and play the fool? I've built my whole life around him, Kuish. Our house, our accounts, everything is tangled together. And what if he stops? What if this is just a phase and… Girl. She cut me off. Listen to yourself. You're already making excuses for him, and you've known for like 6 hours. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing and doing are two different things. I went home that night and cooked dinner like normal. Set the table. Lit candles. When Damon came home, I'd already decided what I was going to do. I was going to give him a chance to tell me the truth. Baby, we need to talk, I said as we sat down to eat. His jaw tightened slightly. About what? About us. About our marriage. I feel like we've been distant lately and I want to fix it. I watched him relax. He thought I didn't know. He thought this was just another one of my needy moments. Janelle, I'm tired. Can we not do this tonight? It's important to me. He sighed, that frustrated sigh that made me feel like a burden. What do you want me to say? Things have been stressful. Work is crazy. I'm doing the best I can. Have you been faithful to me? The question hung in the air like smoke. I watched his face carefully. The micro-expressions. The way his eyes shifted just slightly to the left. The way his hand gripped his fork a little tighter. Why would you ask me that? Offense. Classic deflection. After everything I've done for you, for us, you're really gonna disrespect me like that? It's a simple question, Damon. It's an insulting question. He stood up, throwing his napkin on the table. I work my ass off every day to provide for this household, and this is the thanks I get? Accusations. I didn't accuse you. I asked you a question. You know what, Janelle? I can't do this right now. You're always starting something. Always got something to complain about. I'm going out. Where? Does it matter? You're just gonna accuse me of cheating anyway. He grabbed his keys and left. Slammed the door so hard the picture frames rattled. I sat there in the dining room, candles still burning, food getting cold, and I knew he'd just given me his answer. A faithful man would have said no. Would have been confused, concerned, would have asked why I was asking. Would have reassured me. But a guilty man? A guilty man gets defensive. Turns it around. Makes you the villain for even questioning him. I picked up my phone and called Keisha. I need a lawyer, I said. And I need to know how to protect myself. Now you're thinking straight, she said. I got you, sis. We're gonna handle this the right way. The next 3 weeks were the most strategic 3 weeks of my life. I became a detective, a actress, a planner. I smiled at my husband while building my exit strategy. I made love to him while documenting his every move. I played the devoted wife while preparing for war. First, I opened my own bank account at a completely different bank. Started having part of my paycheck direct deposited there. Not enough for him to notice, but enough to start building my escape fund. Second, I made copies of everything. Our marriage certificate, mortgage documents, bank statements, credit card bills, his business records that he left lying around, tax returns, everything that showed our financial picture. Third, I tracked his patterns. Thursdays were Simone nights. He'd come home around 11:30, shower immediately, and fall into bed. Saturdays he'd claim networking events, but his location would show him at her apartment in Midtown. Fourth, I documented photos of suspicious receipts, screenshots of bank charges at restaurants I'd never been to, hotels he'd charged to our joint credit card, lingerie purchases that I never received. The evidence was damning, and I was patient. So patient. I met with 3 divorce attorneys. Settled on Maya Richardson, a sister who'd handled some of the messiest divorces in Atlanta. She was expensive, but she was worth it. Georgia is a no-fault divorce state, Maya explained in her downtown office. But infidelity can impact things, like alimony and asset division, especially if he used marital funds for the affair. He did, I said, sliding over my documentation. Hotel rooms, dinners. He even bought her a bracelet from Tiffany's. Charged it to our joint Amex. Maya smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a woman who loved crushing cheating men in court. You've done your homework. This is good. Really good. Now, let's talk about what you want from this. Everything, I said. I want everything I'm entitled to. The house is in both our names, but I paid the down payment with my savings. I've been covering most of the bills for the past year while he invested in his business. I want him to buy me out or sell it and split the profit. I want half of his retirement accounts. And I want him to know that he picked the wrong woman to play with. That last part one can't guarantee, Maya said. But the rest? We can make that happen. I paid her retainer with money from my secret account, set up a payment plan for the rest, and I walked out of that office feeling powerful for the first time in years. At home, I was still the perfect wife, still made his meals, still pretended everything was fine, because the longer he thought I was clueless, the more rope he had to hang himself with. He got sloppy, started making less effort to hide it, would text Simone right in front of me, phone tilted just slightly away, would laugh at messages while we watched TV together, would tell me he had to work late and not even bother to sound convincing anymore. Part of me wanted to scream, wanted to confront him with everything I knew, but I kept thinking about something Maya had said. Emotion is the enemy of strategy. Every time you want to react, remember your goal. The goal is to win, not to be right in the moment. So I waited, and I planned, and I became someone I didn't recognize. Someone cold, someone calculating, someone who could smile at her husband while plotting his downfall. Maybe that makes me a bad person. I don't know. All I know is that survival sometimes requires you to be someone you never thought you'd be. It all came to a head on a Thursday night in October. I'd come home early from work, claiming I felt sick. But really, I wanted to be there when Damon came home from wherever he really went on Thursday nights. He walked in at 11:45, reeking of perfume and sex. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair was messed up. And he had the audacity to look annoyed that I was still awake. "Why are you up?" he asked. "Couldn't sleep," I said from the couch. "How was your evening?" "Long client dinner ran late." Which client? His jaw ticked. Why all the questions, Janelle? Just making conversation with my husband. Is that not allowed? You know what? I'm tired of this. I'm tired of you questioning me all the time. I'm tired of feeling like I'm on trial in my own house. Your own house. I stood up. Interesting choice of words. You know what I mean. Do I? Because from where I'm standing, this is our house. That I helped buy. That I helped maintain. That I've poured my money and time and energy into while you've been. What exactly have you been doing, Damon? Working. Providing. Trying to build something for us. For us. I laughed. It sounded bitter even to my own ears. Is Simone part of us? The color drained from his face. For a second, just a second, I saw fear flash across his features. Then it was gone, replaced by anger. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because I think you do. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. For months, Damon. You've been sleeping with her for 4 months. 4 months of lying to my face. For months of making me feel crazy. For noticing something was wrong. For months of betraying every vow you made to me. You went through my phone? His voice was incredulous. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I saw a text come through. And yes, after that I looked. And I found everything. The messages. The photos. The plans. All of it. He ran his hand over his face. Janelle, listen. No. You listen. I gave you a chance to tell me the truth. Remember? Asked you point blank if you'd been faithful. And you made me feel guilty for even asking. You stormed out. Made me the villain. And the whole time you knew. You knew what you were doing, and you did it anyway. It's not what you think. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't insult me by trying to minimize this. I've seen the messages, Damon. I know exactly what it is. He sat down on the arm of the couch, his cocky facade cracking. It was a mistake. I'll end it. I swear, baby, I'll end it right now. It didn't mean anything. You're my wife. You're the one I love. There was a time when those words would have been enough. When I would have cried and forgiven him and tried to make it work. When I would have blamed myself for not being enough. But that Janelle was gone. I want a divorce, I said calmly. His head snapped up. What? You heard me. I want a divorce. I've already filed. You'll be served the papers tomorrow. You filed? He stood up, advancing toward me. Without even talking to me about it? Without giving me a chance to fix this. Fix this. I stepped back. Damon, you can't fix this. You broke something that can't be repaired. You didn't just cheat on me. You lied to me every single day. You gaslit me. Made me question my own sanity. Made me apologize for having feelings. You destroyed my trust, my self-esteem, my peace of mind. And you did it, knowing exactly what you were doing. So, that's it? You're just gonna throw away our marriage? I'm not the one who threw it away. You did. The moment you decided someone else was worth more than your vows. He changed tactics then. Got on his knees. Literally. Started crying. Baby, please. I love you. I know I messed up. I know I did. But we can get through this. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't give up on us. It was almost convincing. Almost. But I'd seen this movie before. Watched my own mama take back my daddy. After affair, each time believing his tears and promises. Watched her lose herself piece by piece until she was just a shell of who she used to be. I wasn't going to be her. I'm done, Damon. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem. You should have thought about that before you decided to risk everything for someone else. This is my house too. And you'll get your share of it in the divorce. But tonight, you need to leave. Pack a bag and go. You can't kick me out of my own house. Actually, I can. I already spoke to a lawyer. Adultery. Marital funds used for the affair. I have documentation of everything. Hotels, dinners, gifts. All charged to our joint accounts. You really want to fight me on this? He stared at me like he'd never seen me before. And maybe he hadn't. Maybe he'd only ever seen the version of me that he'd created, the submissive, forgiving wife who'd take whatever he dished out. But I wasn't her anymore. Fine, he spat, standing up.
Fine.
You want to be that way? You're gonna regret this, Janelle. You're gonna realize what you had, and by then it'll be too late. I know exactly what I had, I said quietly. A man who promised to love and cherish me but treated me like I was disposable. And you're right, it is too late. But not for the reasons you think. He stormed upstairs. I heard him throwing things into a bag, slamming drawers, punching walls. 45 minutes later, he came back down with a duffel bag and a face full of rage. You're making a huge mistake, he said at the door. Do you think I was making a huge mistake? How could I stand such a bad, awful man? Do you think what I did was right? Let's discuss it in the comments. If you like my video, I would be very happy if you subscribe to the channel and like the video. The only mistake I made was trusting you. He left, and I locked the door behind him, turned off all the lights, and slid down to the floor in the dark. And then I cried.
God, I cried.
Not because I wanted him back, but because of all the time I'd wasted. All the pieces of myself I'd lost trying to make him happy. All the dreams I'd built that were now ashes. I cried for the woman I used to be and the woman I'd had to become. But even through the tears, I felt something else. Something I hadn't felt in years. Relief the first week after Damon left was hell. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to pretend I was strong and powerful and unbothered. I was a mess. A complete and total mess. I called in sick to work for 3 days straight. Couldn't get out of bed. Couldn't eat. Couldn't stop replaying every moment of our relationship, wondering what I'd missed, what I could have done differently, why I wasn't enough. That's the thing they don't tell you about leaving a toxic relationship. Even when you know it's the right choice, even when you know they were wrong, even when you have all the evidence, you still blame yourself. You still feel like you failed. Keisha practically moved in. She'd show up every morning with coffee and breakfast, force me to shower, sit with me while I cried. She never once said, "I told you so," even though she had every right to. "You're allowed to grieve," she said on day 4, when I apologized for being such a mess. "You didn't just lose a husband. You lost the future you thought you were building. That's worth mourning." My mama came up from Savannah that weekend, walked into my house, took one look at me, and wrapped me in her arms. "I know, baby," she whispered. "I know it hurts, but you did the right thing. You're stronger than I ever was." That made me cry even harder, because I knew what she meant. I knew she was thinking about all the times she'd stayed with my daddy despite his cheating, his lies, his disrespect. How she'd wasted 20 years of her life on a man who never deserved her. I don't feel strong, Mama. Strong people rarely do, baby. Strength isn't about not feeling pain. It's about feeling it and surviving anyway. But surviving felt impossible those first few weeks. Damon had moved in with Simone immediately. Didn't even try to hide it. His Instagram went from being mostly his real estate posts to photos of them together, at restaurants, at the beach, at events. Her hand in his arm around her waist. Both of them smiling like they'd won something. Everyone could see it. My friends, my family, my coworkers. The public humiliation was almost worse than the betrayal itself. People started treating me differently. At work, I'd catch the pitying looks, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room. Someone even had the audacity to ask if I was okay, with this fake sympathy dripping from their voice, like they weren't just fishing for gossip. I wanted to disappear. Wanted to move to a different city where nobody knew me or my story. Where I could start over as someone who hadn't been left, hadn't been cheated on, hadn't been the fool everyone was talking about. The divorce proceedings started, and they were brutal. Damon hired an expensive lawyer, paid for with money from our joint account, of course, and decided he was going to fight me on everything. He wanted the house, claimed his business income was what paid for most of it, even though I had proof I'd paid the down payment and the majority of the mortgage. He wanted spousal support from me. Said my salary at the hospital was higher than his fluctuating income. Never mind that he'd been spending thousands on another woman. He wanted half of my retirement account, the account I'd been contributing to since before I even met him. He's trying to bleed you dry, Maya said during one of our meetings. This is classic. He knows he messed up, so now he's trying to punish you for leaving. He wants you to suffer. How long is this going to take? Depends on how reasonable he wants to be. But based on what I'm seeing, we're looking at months. Maybe longer. Months. Months of legal fees I couldn't really afford. Months of fighting over every single asset. Months of him dragging this out to hurt me. I started having panic attacks. Real ones. Where I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, felt like I was dying. They'd hit me at random times, in the grocery store, at work, driving home. I'd have to pull over and wait for them to pass, gasping for air, wondering if this was what the rest of my life would feel like. My therapist increased our sessions to twice a week. Dr. Harrison had me working through trauma exercises, EMDR therapy, medication discussions. I was so far from the confident woman I used to be. And the money. God, the money was terrifying. Our joint accounts were frozen pending the divorce settlement. I'd been smart enough to start my separate account, but it didn't have much in it yet. Suddenly, I was covering all the house bills alone on my salary. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, everything. Plus lawyer fees. Plus therapy costs. Plus all the regular life expenses. I was hemorrhaging money. My savings were draining fast. And Damon? He was living rent-free with Simone, posting pictures of fancy dinners and weekend trips while I was deciding between paying my lawyer and paying my electric bill. This is what nobody tells you about leaving. It's expensive. Not just emotionally, financially. The person who leaves often ends up struggling while the person who caused the damage gets to move on without consequence. I started picking up extra shifts at the hospital. Weekend work. Holiday coverage. Anything to bring in more money. I was working 60, 70 hours a week, coming home exhausted, falling into bed, and doing it all over again. My friends started worrying. You're running yourself into the ground, Keisha said. You need to rest. But I couldn't rest. Because resting meant thinking. And thinking meant remembering. And remembering meant falling apart. Work was my salvation. At the hospital, I was needed. I was valuable. I was good at what I did. Nobody there was looking at me with pity. They were looking at me for solutions, for leadership, for expertise. I threw myself into a major project, restructuring our patient intake system. It was tedious, complicated work that required long hours and intense focus. Perfect. I could lose myself in spreadsheets and protocols and forget, for a few hours, that my personal life was in shambles. 3 months after Damon left, I hit rock bottom. It was a Saturday night in January. Cold, miserable, Atlanta winter rain coming down in sheets. I was alone in the house, eating Chinese takeout from the container, scrolling through social media, even though I knew I shouldn't. And there it was. The post that broke me. Damon and Simone. At some fancy restaurant downtown. Her hand extended toward the camera, a massive diamond ring catching the light. His arm around her. Both of them glowing. She said yes. Can't wait to spend forever with my queen. We weren't even divorced yet. We were still married. Legally married. And he was engaged to someone else. I threw my phone across the room. Heard it hit the wall and clatter to the floor. And then I screamed. Just screamed. Let out every ounce of pain and rage and humiliation that I'd been holding in for months. How dare he? How dare he move on like I was nothing? Like our marriage was nothing. Like the years we spent together meant nothing. I called him. I don't even remember deciding to do it. I just found myself listening to the phone ring, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. Janelle? He sounded annoyed. Of course he did. I was interrupting his celebration. Are you serious right now? You proposed to her? We're still married, Damon. Technically married. Come on, Janelle. Don't act surprised. We're getting divorced anyway. What does it matter? What is it? I couldn't even form words. We took vows. We stood in front of our families and promised. Forever. And you're acting like that was nothing. It was nothing. His voice was cold. You know what your problem is? You're stuck in the past. I've moved on. Simone makes me happy in ways you never could. She doesn't nag. She doesn't question me. She trusts me. She's everything you couldn't be. Every word was a knife. He knew exactly where to cut to make it hurt the most. You cheated on me, I said, my voice breaking. You destroyed our marriage. And now you're trying to make it my fault. I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with you. Sign the papers, take your share, and move on with your life. I have. He hung up. I sat there on my kitchen floor, back against the cabinets, and I felt something inside me die. The last little piece of hope I'd been carrying, that maybe he'd feel guilty, maybe he'd apologize, maybe he'd acknowledge what he'd done. It died right there. He didn't care. He never cared. To him, I was just an inconvenience, an obstacle between him and his new life. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours maybe. The takeout got cold. The rain kept falling. And I kept sitting there in the dark, wondering how my life had become this. I thought about giving up. Not in a scary way. Just giving up on fighting. Signing whatever papers he wanted. Letting him have whatever he wanted. Walking away with nothing just to make it stop hurting. What was the point of fighting for things that would always remind me of him anyway? My phone buzzed. I'd apparently not broken it when I threw it. A text from Keisha. You good? Haven't heard from you today. I stared at that message for a long time, and something shifted.
No.
I wasn't good. I was the furthest thing from good. But I was still here. Still breathing. Still surviving. And Damon didn't get to take anything else from me. He'd taken my trust.
My peace.
My dignity.
My time.
But he didn't get to take my future. I picked myself up off that floor. Washed my face. Made a decision. I was done being the victim in this story. The next morning, I called Maya. I want to fight, I said. For everything. I don't care how long it takes or how much it costs. I want every single thing I'm entitled to. He doesn't get to walk away from this unscathed. Now that's what I like to hear, Maya said. Let's destroy him. Legally, of course. We went on the offensive. Filed motions. Submitted evidence. Built an ironclad case. Maya was vicious in the best way, professional, calculated, and absolutely relentless. Turns out, Damon hadn't been as smart as he thought. All those charges for hotels and dinners with Simone?
All.
Made during our marriage with marital funds. All documented. All proof of dissipation of marital assets, using joint money for an affair. In Georgia, that matters. It doesn't matter that we're a no-fault state. When you use marital money to fund an affair, the court can adjust the property division to compensate the innocent spouse. Plus, Damon had been lying about his income, hiding money from his real estate deals in accounts he thought I didn't know about. But I'd found them during my detective phase. Had copies of statements showing he was making way more than he'd claimed. Maya was practically gleeful. He's either going to settle for what we're asking, or we're going to eviscerate him. In court. His choice. But Damon being Damon, he chose pride over practicality. Refused to settle. Said he'd see me in court. Fine by me. While all this legal warfare was happening, I was making other changes. I started therapy 3 times a week. Started actually doing the work instead of just showing up. Confronted the patterns I'd learned in childhood. Watching my mama stay with my daddy, learning that a woman's worth was tied to keeping a man, believing that love meant sacrificing yourself. I joined a divorce support group at my church. Sat in a circle with other women who'd been betrayed, abandoned, left behind. Heard their stories. Shared mine. Realized I wasn't alone. I started working out. Not to get revenge hot, or whatever that toxic narrative is, but because I needed to feel
Strong.
needed to reconnect with my body after years of feeling powerless. Started with walks, then jogging, then a gym membership, then a trainer who kicked my ass 3 times a week. The physical strength started translating to mental strength. Every mile I ran, I felt more like myself. Every weight I lifted, I felt less like a victim. I cut my hair. Sounds superficial, but it mattered. I'd been growing it out for years because Damon liked long hair. Went to Keisha's salon and said, "Cut it all off." She gave me a tapered cut, short on the sides, a little length on top. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself, but I liked it. I looked powerful, looked like a woman who didn't need anyone's approval. I started saying no to friends who wanted me to do things I didn't want to do,
To family members who asked
invasive questions about the divorce, to coworkers who tried to rope me into extra work. I'd spent so long being accommodating, being agreeable, being whatever everyone else needed me to be. Not anymore. I started going out again. Not dating, God no, I wasn't ready for that, but just living. Dinner with friends. Movies. Day trips. Things I'd stopped doing because Damon always made me feel guilty for having a life outside of him. And slowly, so slowly, I almost didn't notice, I started feeling like a person again. Not just someone's ex-wife. Not just someone's victim. A whole person with interests and friends and a future. But I still wasn't okay. Not really. Because while I was healing, Damon was thriving. Or at least that's what his social media showed. New car. New clothes. Vacation with Simone to Miami, then Cancun, then Jamaica. His business was apparently booming. And he made sure everyone could see it. Meanwhile, I was still struggling. Still working crazy hours. Still stressed about money. Still fighting him in court over every penny. The comparison was killing me. How is it fair that he got to move on so easily while I was barely surviving? Stop looking at his pages, Keisha said for the 100th time. You're torturing yourself. I know. I want to see him fail. I want karma to catch up with him. I want him to suffer even half as much as I have. Karma's coming, sis. Trust me. But you gotta stop waiting for it and start building your own happiness. She was right. But it's hard to build happiness when you're drowning. The turning point came in March. 6 months after Damon had left. I was at the hospital, working late as usual, when my boss, Dr. Peterson, called me into her office. Janelle, sit down. We need to talk. My heart sank. With everything going on, I'd been paranoid about my job performance. Had I messed something up? Was I getting fired? I'll get straight to point, Dr. Peterson said. I've been watching you these past few months. I know you're going through a difficult time personally, but your work hasn't suffered. In fact, it's gotten better. That patient intake restructure you spearheaded? It's reduced wait times by 30% and patient satisfaction scores are up across the board. I blinked.
Oh.
Thank you. I'm not just complimenting you. I'm offering you something. We're opening a new outpatient facility in Buckhead. State-of-the-art, focusing on preventative care and wellness. We need a director of operations. Someone who can build the administrative structure from the ground up. Someone innovative, dedicated, and capable of handling high-pressure situations. She slid a folder across the desk. The position comes with a significant salary increase. 30% raise. Better benefits, stock options, and a team you'd build yourself. I think you'd be perfect for it. I opened the folder. Saw the salary number. Nearly double what I was making now. This was everything. This was the opportunity I'd been working toward for years. The kind of position that could change my entire financial situation. That could give me the security I'd been desperately trying to build. My voice cracked. I don't know what to say.
Say yes.
You've earned this, Janelle. Not just because of your recent work, but because you're damn good at what you do. I've been in healthcare administration for 25 years, and I rarely see someone with a combination of technical skill and people management ability. You're wasted in your current role. Tears started falling before I could stop them. I'm sorry, Don't apologize. I'm a woman. I've been through divorce too. I know what it feels like when your personal life is falling apart and you're trying to hold it together professionally. The fact that you've not only held it together, but excelled, that tells me everything I need to know about your character. I took the job. Obviously, I took the job. And walking out of that office, folder clutched to my chest, I felt something I hadn't felt in months.
Hope.
Real, tangible hope that maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. The new position started in April, and it was like stepping into a completely different life. My new office had windows. Actual floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Buckhead. I had an assistant.
A
budget. A team I got to hire myself. And most importantly, I had authority. Real authority to make decisions and implement changes without having to beg for approval through 6 layers of bureaucracy. The salary increase hit my account, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. I paid off my credit cards, caught up on bills, put money back into savings, started actually living instead of just surviving.
But more than the money, it was the respect.
People listened when I spoke, valued my opinions,
Sought out my
expertise. After years of being diminished by Damon, made to feel like my thoughts didn't matter, this was revolutionary. I poured everything into building that facility, worked 16-hour days, but this time it was different. I wasn't running from pain, I was running towards something.
purpose, achievement.
A legacy that had nothing to do with being someone's wife. We hired an all-female leadership team. I made sure of it. Brought in the best of the best, women who'd been overlooked, underestimated, passed over for promotions because they were too aggressive or not a culture fit. I gave them a place where their brilliance could shine. We called ourselves the Buckhead Collective, and we were revolutionizing healthcare administration in Atlanta. My assistant, Tasha, was a young sister fresh out of grad school with more fire and ambition than anyone I'd ever met. She reminded me of myself before Damon had dimmed my light. "You know what I love about working for you?" she said one day as we were reviewing quarterly projections. "You're not threatened by other women's success." My last boss, man, of course, he hated when I had ideas. Made me feel stupid for even speaking up. "That's his loss," I said. And honestly, strong women aren't threatened by other strong women. We lift each other. That's how we all rise. She smiled. "That's why this place feels different. Everyone here actually wants to be here. That's rare." She was right. The energy in our facility was electric. We were building something special, and everyone could feel it. The outpatient center opened in June with a massive ribbon-cutting ceremony. Local news covered it. The mayor showed up, and there I was, in a sharp navy suit I'd bought specifically for the occasion, cutting that ribbon with scissors that probably cost more than my old monthly grocery budget, smiling for cameras, representing everything I'd built. My mama cried when she saw the news coverage. "That's my baby," she kept saying. "Look at you. Just look at you." Akeisha posted it everywhere, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. This is what rising looks like. This is what you become when you choose yourself. Proud doesn't even cover it. At Janelle, you're the blueprint. The comments flooded in. Friends from college I hadn't spoken to in years. Former coworkers. Even some of Damon's family members, weirdly enough, congratulating me and conspicuously not mentioning him. But the best part? I felt it. For the first time since finding those texts, I felt genuinely proud of myself.
Not
because I was proving anything to Damon, though that was a nice bonus, but because I'd done this.
me on my own.
With my own talent and work ethic and determination. I'd rebuilt myself from the ground up, and the foundation was solid this time. Built on my own worth, not someone else's validation. Meanwhile, The divorce was finally moving forward. Damon's lawyer had tried every delay tactic in the book, but Maya was relentless. We had a court date set for August. He's going to try to settle before then, Maya predicted. Once he sees the evidence we're presenting, the affair spending, the hidden income, all of it, he's going to realize fighting is going to cost him more than settling. She was right. 2 weeks before our court date, Damon's lawyer reached out with a settlement offer. He'd buy out my half of the house at appraised value. We'd split the retirement accounts. He'd pay my legal fees. And we'd both walk away clean. It was fair. More than fair, actually. It was basically everything I'd asked for 8 months ago when this whole nightmare started. What do you think? Maya asked. Thought about it. Thought about dragging him through court, making him answer for every lie, every betrayal, every dollar he'd spent on Simone. Thought about the satisfaction of watching him squirm on the witness stand. But I also thought about closure. About finally being done with this chapter of my life. About being legally free of him. About never having to share a last name with him again. Let's take it, I said. I'm done fighting. I want to move forward. We signed the papers on a Thursday afternoon in July. I wore white, not for any symbolic reason, just because it was hot and white reflects heat. But when I walked out of that lawyer's office, officially divorced, legally free, it felt symbolic anyway. Rebirth. Clean slate. New beginning. I went straight to Keisha's salon. I want color, I told her. Something bold. Something that screams new era.
She grinned.
Say less. 2 hours later, I had honey blonde highlights that made my skin glow. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Confident. Strong. Powerful. Beautiful. This was who I was now. And I loved her. Life started moving fast after that. Good fast. Exciting fast. The outpatient center exceeded all our first quarter projections. Patient satisfaction scores were through the roof. We were getting media attention for our innovative approach to preventative care. And I was getting noticed. I got invited to speak at a healthcare administration conference in September.
Me.
Speaking to an auditorium full of executives and thought leaders about operational efficiency and patient-centered care models. Standing on that stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, all focused on me, all interested in what I had to say, it was surreal. A year ago, I'd been crying on my kitchen floor, convinced my life was over. Now I was here, a thought leader, an innovator, someone whose expertise was valued on a national level. The standing ovation at the end of my presentation brought tears to my eyes. Happy tears for once. Afterward, people swarmed me with questions, business cards, LinkedIn requests. One woman, an executive from a major hospital network in New York, pulled me aside. We're looking for someone to lead our new patient experience initiative, she said. National role. 7 figures. Relocation package. I think you'd be perfect.
Can we talk?
7 figures. 7 figures. I took her card, promised to consider it, and floated back to my hotel room on a cloud of validation. I wasn't ready to leave Atlanta yet. This city was my home, and I was building something important here.
But
knowing I could, knowing I had options, knowing my trajectory was skyrocketing, that felt powerful. I started dating again in October. Nothing serious, just putting myself out there. Testing the waters. Remembering what it felt like to be wanted, appreciated, pursued. Downloaded the apps. Set up a profile that was all me, my accomplishments, my interests, my truth.
No
hiding. No shrinking myself to seem less intimidating. No downplaying my success to make insecure men comfortable. The responses were overwhelming. Hundreds of matches. Men who were impressed by my career, not threatened by it. Men who wanted to know about my work, my passions, my goals. Men who actually listened when I spoke. I went on dates. Some good, some terrible, all learning experiences. Remembered what it felt like to laugh with someone, to have intellectual conversations, to be seen as a whole person, not just a role to fill. I wasn't looking for anything serious. Wasn't ready for that yet. But it felt good to remember that I was desirable. That Damon leaving hadn't made me less valuable. If anything, it had freed me to become more of who I was always meant to be. One guy, Marcus, a professor at Georgia Tech, took me to this amazing restaurant in Midtown. We talked 4 hours about everything and nothing. He asked about my work with genuine interest, shared his research on urban development, made me laugh so hard I snorted wine. At the end of the night, walking me to my car, he said, "I know this is only our first date, but I have to say, your energy is incredible. You're like this force of nature. Whoever let you go is the biggest fool in Atlanta." I smiled. You know what? You're absolutely right. He is. I wasn't ready for anything serious with Marcus or anyone else. But these dates reminded me of something important. I had value. I was worthy of respect, attention, genuine interest. And I'd never settle for less again. In November, I bought my own house. Not the one Damon and I had shared. I'd taken my buyout money and said goodbye to that place without looking back. Too many bad memories soaked into those walls. No, I bought my dream house. A modern townhouse in Virginia Highland. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a rooftop terrace with views of the Atlanta skyline. Hardwood floors. Chef's kitchen. Walk-in closet. Bigger than my old bedroom. It was mine. Only mine. Bought with money I'd earned. Decorated exactly how I wanted. Filled with furniture I'd chosen. No compromises. No arguments about paint colors or where to hang art. Just my space, reflecting my taste, my personality, my life. Move-in day, my mama, Keisha, and my girl squad from work helped me unpack. We popped champagne on the rooftop as the sun set over the city, toasting to new beginnings and leaving the past behind. "You did it," Keisha said, pulling me into a hug. "A year ago, you were broken. And look at you now. Your own
House.
your dream job. Your whole life ahead of you." "I couldn't have done it without you," I said. "You were there for every breakdown, every panic attack, every moment I wanted to give up." That's what sisters do. But you did the work, Janelle.
You chose to survive. You chose to fight.
You chose yourself. That's all you. She was right. I had done this. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt genuinely, completely proud of myself. I didn't keep tabs on Damon anymore. Didn't check his social media. Didn't ask mutual friends about him. Didn't care. But Atlanta's a small city in some ways. Word gets around. And in December, word got around to me. I was at a holiday networking event, one of those fancy affairs with open bars and past appetizers where professionals schmooze and make connections. I'd become a regular at these things, building my network, establishing myself as a fixture in Atlanta's healthcare leadership community. I was talking to a hospital administrator I'd been wanting to connect with when someone mentioned Damon's
name.
My ears perked up involuntarily. Yeah, Damon, right. Used to be killing it in real estate. But I heard his business is tanking. Bad investments. Lost some major clients. Word is he's drowning in debt. Another voice chimed in. I heard he got sued by a client. Something about misrepresenting a property.
Cases.
Still pending, but it doesn't look good for him. And that girl he left his wife for? Heard, she bounced. Couldn't handle being with a broke man, I guess. My face stayed neutral. But inside? Inside, I was screaming. Not with joy. I'm not that petty. But with a sense of cosmic justice. With validation that maybe, just maybe, karma was real. I didn't say anything. Didn't confirm I was the ex-wife they were obliquely referring to. Just smiled, excused myself, and walked away. Later that night, alone in my beautiful townhouse, I let myself feel it. The vindication. The relief.
The
satisfaction of knowing that while I'd been building myself up, he'd been falling apart. I'd chosen the high road. Chosen to focus on my own growth instead of his destruction. And somehow the universe had still delivered justice. But the real victory wasn't his downfall. It was my rise. The fact that I no longer needed his failure to feel successful. I'd built something so solid, so real, so mine that his life, whether good or bad, no longer had any impact on mine. That's when I knew I'd truly healed. When I could hear about his struggles and feel nothing but indifference.
No.
Anger. No satisfaction. No pain. Just nothing. He was my past. And I was living in my present, building my future, and thriving in ways I never could have. While I was trying to hold together a marriage with a man who never valued me. Christmas that year was magical. I hosted dinner at my new house, my mama, my siblings, Keisha, and her family, my work squad. My dining room table was full of people I loved, people who'd supported me, people who celebrated my wins and held me through my losses. We ate too much, laughed too loud, and as I looked around that table, I felt it. Genuine, complete happiness.
Not
The performance of happiness I'd mastered during my marriage. Real joy, real contentment, real peace. I want a toast, I said, standing up with my glass. A year ago, I was in the darkest place of my life. I thought I'd lost everything. But what I actually lost was dead weight. What I actually lost was a life that was too small for who I was becoming. Everyone raised their glasses. This year taught me that sometimes what feels like an ending is actually a beginning. That's sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing that could have happened. That when someone walks away, they're not rejecting you. They're just making room for your real life to begin. To new beginnings, Keisha called out. To choosing yourself, my mama added. To women who rise, Tasha cheered. We all drank, and in that moment, surrounded by love and light and laughter, I knew something for certain. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And this was only the beginning. The new year hit different. January 2024, and I was standing in my townhouse, looking out at the Atlanta skyline, sipping coffee from a mug that said CEO Energy, and I actually felt it. That energy, that power, that undeniable sense that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. My phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Peterson. Board meeting at 2. They want to discuss your proposal for the wellness expansion. Prepare to have your budget approved. You've earned this. I smiled. The wellness expansion, my baby. A comprehensive mental health and preventative care program that would serve underserved communities across Atlanta. I'd been developing it for months, and it was revolutionary. The kind of thing that could change lives. The kind of thing that proved I was building a legacy, not just a career. I got dressed in a custom-tailored power suit, burgundy, because I was done playing it safe with navy and black. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman I'd been 2 years ago. That woman who'd found those texts and thought her world was ending. This woman? This woman's world was just beginning. At the board meeting, I presented my proposal with the confidence of someone who knew their worth. Detailed projections, community impact assessments, partnership opportunities, funding structures. I'd done my homework, and it showed. The board approved it unanimously. Standing ovation. One board member, an older black man who'd been in healthcare for 40 years, pulled me aside afterward. In all my years, I've never seen someone command a room like that, he said. You remind me why I got into this work. To see young people like you changing the game. Young people like me. At 29, I was the youngest director in the hospital network's history.
And I
Wasn't just filling a seat, I was revolutionizing the entire approach. February brought something unexpected. An email from a literary agent. Ms. Matthews, I've been following your work in healthcare administration and your journey. I think you have a story that needs to be told. Have you ever considered writing a book? I'd love to discuss representation.
a book.
About my journey from broken to blessed. About surviving betrayal and building yourself back stronger. About choosing yourself when everyone else abandoned you. I met with her at a coffee shop in Buckhead. Her name was Diana, a sharp sister from New York with decades of experience in publishing. Your story is universal, she said. Every woman who's been betrayed, diminished, made to feel small, they need to hear how you rose.
Not just survived.
Rose. I don't know if I'm ready to be that vulnerable publicly, I admitted. That's exactly why you should do it. Because real healing comes from turning your pain into purpose. Your mess into your message. And honestly, you could help millions of women who are where you were 2 years ago. She wasn't wrong. I thought about all those nights in that divorce support group, hearing women's stories, feeling less alone. What if I could be that for someone else?
Let me think about it, I said.
But I already knew my answer.
Yes.
Because my story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every woman who'd ever been made to feel like she wasn't enough. Meanwhile, life kept delivering plot twists. March brought a call from my mama. Baby, you sitting down? My heart sank. Those words never preceded good news. What happened? It's not bad news, baby. Well, not for you anyway. I ran into Damon's mama at the grocery store. I hadn't heard his name in months. Hadn't thought about him beyond that brief moment at the holiday party, when I'd heard about his business troubles. And, baby, he's in bad shape. Real bad. His business collapsed completely. That lawsuit I guess you heard about?
He lost.
Has to pay the client over $200,000. His fiancée left him, took her ring and everything. He had to move back in with his parents. Back with his parents. At 34. The man who'd been so proud, so successful, so certain he'd traded up. When he left me for Simone, his mama was crying, talking about how he's depressed, barely leaving the house. Asked if I thought you'd be willing to talk to him, help him get back on his feet. The audacity. The absolute audacity. What did you tell her? I told her my daughter is living her best life, and she don't have time to save grown men who threw her away like trash. Then I walked away. I laughed. Actually laughed. Mama, you didn't. I sure did. Baby, you don't owe that man nothing. Not your time, not your energy, and definitely not your salvation. He made his choices. Now he can live with them. She was absolutely right. The old me might have felt bad. Might have considered reaching out, offering help, trying to fix him the way I'd tried to fix everything in our marriage. But that Janelle was dead. And good riddance. Thanks for telling me, Mama. But that's his journey, not mine. That's my girl. I'm proud of who you've become, baby. So proud. After we hung up, I sat with it for a moment, processed what karma had delivered. Damon, the man who'd been so certain he was trading up, so convinced I was the problem, so arrogant in his betrayal, was now broken, alone, and living with his parents. And me? I was thriving in ways I'd never imagined possible. But the crazy thing was, I didn't feel joy about his downfall. I felt nothing. Complete indifference. His life, good or bad, had nothing to do with mine anymore. That's how I knew I'd truly healed. When your ex's destruction doesn't even register as satisfying because you're too busy building your own empire to care. April brought the biggest surprise of all. I was at another networking event. These had become my favorite places, connecting with brilliant people, building relationships, expanding my influence when I met him. Dr. Julian Pierce. Neurosurgeon. Tall, fine, sophisticated in that effortless way that comes from genuine confidence, not performance. We started talking about healthcare innovation, and 4 hours later, we were still talking, having moved from the event to a quiet wine bar, deep in conversation about everything and nothing. He was different. Asked me about my work with genuine interest. Challenged my ideas respectfully. Shared his own vulnerabilities about the pressure of his profession. Actually listened when I spoke. I have to be honest, he said toward the end of the night. I came to that event hoping to make professional connections. I did not expect to meet someone like you. Someone like me? Brilliant, driven, self-aware, beautiful inside and out. The kind of woman who makes you want to be better. I blushed. Actually blushed. When was the last time a man had made me feel seen like this? We started dating. Slowly. Intentionally. No rushing. No forcing. Just two whole people choosing to explore what could be. Julian was everything Damon wasn't. Secure in himself. Supportive of my ambitions. Proud of my success. Instead of threatened by it.
Present. Honest.
Emotionally available. "You know what I love about you?" he said one night as we had dinner at my place. "You don't need me.
You
Don't need anyone. You're complete on your own." That's the kind of woman I want to choose every day. Knowing she's choosing me back not from necessity, but from genuine want. That's when I knew this was what healthy love looked like. Partnership between equals. Mutual respect. Genuine admiration. No power plays, no manipulation, no diminishing. By summer, my life looked nothing like it had 2 years ago. My book deal came through. 6 figures. The working title, From Broken to Blessed, How I Rebuilt My Life. After Betrayal. Publication date set for next spring. The wellness expansion launched in June with a massive community celebration. Over 500 people showed up. Local news covered it. The mayor spoke. And there I was, cutting another ribbon, but this time with even more pride, because this wasn't just about business, it was about service. About giving back to communities that looked like mine. Julian stood in the crowd, cheering louder than anyone. Afterward, he pulled me aside. "I know we've only been together a few months," he said. "And I know you don't need grand gestures or promises. But I need you to know something. Watching you today, seeing you in your element, changing lives. I've never been more certain of anything. You're it for me, Janelle. The woman I want to build with. The partner I want beside me." It wasn't a proposal. It was something better. A declaration. A promise. A vision. And for the first time since my divorce, I could see a future with someone. Not because I needed it, but because I genuinely wanted it. August marked 2 years since I'd found those texts. 2 years since my world had fallen apart. 2 years since I'd thought I'd lost everything. I threw a party, called it my rebirth day. Invited everyone who'd supported me through the darkness. My mama, Keisha, my work family, my new friends, Julian. We gathered on my rooftop terrace as the sun set over Atlanta, the city glowing gold and beautiful. I stood to speak, glass of champagne in hand. 2 years ago today, I discovered my husband was cheating on me. I thought it was the worst day of my life. I thought I'd lost everything. My marriage, my home, my future, my identity. Everyone was silent, listening. But what I actually lost that day was a life that was too small for who I was meant to become. I lost a man who couldn't see my worth. I lost a version of myself who believed she needed someone else's validation to be valuable. Keisha nodded, tears in her eyes. What I gained was everything. I gained myself back. I gained the courage to build the life I actually wanted, not the life I thought I was supposed to want. I gained real friends who celebrated my wins instead of feeling threatened by them. I gained a career that fulfills me. I gained peace. I gained joy. I gained power. Julian squeezed my hand. So tonight, we're not just celebrating surviving betrayal. We're celebrating thriving after it. We're celebrating choosing yourself. We're celebrating the truth that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually a divine redirection to your real life. To Janelle, someone shouted. To women who rise, Keisha added. To second chances and new beginnings, my mama called out. We all drank, and as I looked around at the people I loved, in the home I'd bought with my own money, living the life I'd built with my own hands, I felt it. Complete. Utter. Joy. Not despite what I'd been through, but because of it. Because I'd been broken down to nothing and rebuilt myself into something stronger. Because I'd faced the worst and survived. Because I'd learned that I didn't need anyone to complete me, I was already whole. Later that night, after everyone had left except Julian, we sat on the terrace under the stars. You ever think about him? Julian asked quietly.
Damon.
I considered it. Sometimes. Not often. When I do, I feel grateful. Grateful? Grateful he showed me who he really was. Grateful he left, because staying would have killed who I was meant to become. Grateful for the pain because it taught me what I deserve and what I'll never tolerate again. That's growth, Julian said. Most people stay bitter forever. Bitterness is a prison. Forgiveness, not for him, but for me, was my freedom. I forgave him for being incapable of loving me the way I deserved. I forgave myself for staying too long. And then I moved forward. You're incredible, you know that? I smiled. I'm learning to believe it. We sat in comfortable silence, and I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The pain, the tears, the rage, the work, the healing, the climbing, the rising. Every single moment had been worth it to get here. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was Damon. Janelle, I know I have no right to reach out. I know I destroyed everything we had.
But I need you to know that. I'm sorry.
Truly sorry. I see now what I lost. I see now what I had. You were everything and I was too stupid too. Selfish, too blind to see it. I know it's too late. I know you've moved on. I just needed you to know that you deserved better. You always deserved better. I hope life is treating you well. You deserve every blessing coming your way. I read it twice. Then I showed Julian. What are you going to say? He asked. Nothing, I said, deleting the message. There's nothing left to say. That chapter is closed. This is my new book. I blocked the number. Felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no curiosity about what had prompted the message. Just peace. That's how I knew I'd won. Not because he'd failed while I succeeded, though there was poetic justice in that, but because I'd become someone who didn't need his apology to feel validated. Someone who didn't need his acknowledgement to feel whole. Someone who'd built such a beautiful life that his absence was a blessing, not a loss. October brought another major milestone. I got promoted again. Executive Vice President of Operations for the entire hospital network. A position that came with a title, a massive salary increase, and a seat at the table where major healthcare decisions for the region were made at 30 years old. I was one of the youngest executives in the network's history. And I wasn't there because I was lucky. I was there because I was brilliant, because I'd earned every bit of it through hard work, innovation, and refusing to be anything less than excellent. The press release went out. My face was on the hospital's website, in healthcare journals, in local business publications. Rising star in healthcare administration. Innovative leader reshaping patient care. Atlanta's top healthcare executives to watch. My phone exploded with congratulations.
Friends, family, colleagues,
people I hadn't talked to in years. Everyone's celebrating my success. But the message that meant the most came from Dr. Harrison, my therapist who'd walked me through the darkest days of my divorce. Janelle, I always knew you'd rise. But watching you actually do it has been one of the great privileges of my career. You came to me broken, convinced you were the problem, believing you weren't enough. Look at you.
Now.
You're not just surviving, you're thriving beyond measure. You're the success story I share with other clients struggling through betrayal. You're proof that the end of something painful can be the beginning of something beautiful. I'm so proud of you. I cried when I read it. Happy tears. Grateful tears. Tears of relief that I'd made it through to the other side. That night, Julian took me out to celebrate. The nicest restaurant in Atlanta. Private table overlooking the city. Champagne that cost more than my old monthly grocery budget. I want to toast to you, he said, raising his glass. To the strongest woman I know. The woman who turned her pain into power. The woman who refused to let betrayal define her. The woman who built an empire from the ashes of what was meant to destroy her. Janelle, you're everything. We clinked glasses, And as I looked out at the city lights, I thought about the journey. 2 years from broken to
blessed.
from victim to victor, from surviving to thriving. December rolled around, and with it my book's final draft. I'd written every word through tears and laughter, and revelation, relived every painful moment. But I'd also documented every victory, every lesson, every moment of growth. Reading it back was like watching a movie of my own life. I barely recognized the woman in the early chapters. So broken, so lost, so convinced she was worthless without a man's validation. The woman who wrote the final chapters was someone else entirely. Powerful, confident,
Whole. Complete.
blessed beyond measure. Diana, my agent, called after reading the final manuscript. Janelle, this is special. This isn't just a memoir.
This
Is a roadmap for women everywhere who are going through what you went through. This is going to change lives. That's all I want, I said honestly. If even one woman reads this and finds the courage to leave what's destroying her, to choose herself, to believe she's worthy of better, then everything I went through was worth
it.
The book was scheduled for release in March. Pre-orders were already coming in. Book clubs were requesting me for speaking engagements. Podcasts wanted interviews. My story was becoming bigger than me. It was becoming a movement. Christmas Eve, Julian and I were at my townhouse, decorating my tree. My mama was coming in the morning. Keisha and her family would be there for dinner. My work family had already celebrated with me at our holiday
Party.
Life was full.
Rich.
Beautiful. I have something for you, Julian said, pulling out a small wrapped box. We said no gifts until Christmas morning. I protested. This can't wait. I opened it. Inside was a key. Key to your place? I asked, confused. Key to our place, he corrected. If you want. I'm not trying to rush you. I know you value your independence.
Your space, your peace.
But I also know that I love you.
Completely.
And I want to build a life with you.
Not
Because either of us needs it, but because we both want it. So this key is an invitation.
move in with me, or I'll
Move in with you. Or we'll find a new place together. Whatever you want. Just say you'll consider sharing your life with me. I looked at the key. Thought about what it represented.
partnership. Choice.
Love built on mutual respect, not necessity. Yes, I said. Not right away.
But yes.
Let's build something together. He kissed me, and it felt like coming home. Not because I needed him, but because I'd chosen him.
And he'd
Chosen me. 2 whole people deciding to be even better together. As we sat under the twinkling lights of my Christmas tree, I thought about where I'd been and where I was.
going.
2 years ago, I'd been on my kitchen floor, crying over a man who'd betrayed me, convinced my life was over. Now I was here, successful,
Loved.
respected,
Happy. Whole.
blessed. The journey from broken to blessed hadn't been easy. It had required me to face my demons, challenge my beliefs, rebuild my identity, and fight for every inch of progress. But I'd done it. And in doing so, I'd become someone I never could have been if that betrayal hadn't happened. Damon leaving me wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. The moment when my real life started. When I stopped being who I thought I should be and started becoming who I was always meant to be. And as I sat there in my beautiful home, with a man who truly loved me, with a career that fulfilled me, with peace that surpassed understanding, I realized something profound. I wasn't blessed despite being broken. I was blessed because I'd been broken and had chosen to rebuild myself into something stronger, more beautiful, more powerful than before. That's the real secret they don't tell you about betrayal. It doesn't have to destroy you. It can transform you. But only if you choose it. Only if you do the work. Only if you believe you deserve better and refuse to settle for anything less. My phone buzzed. A notification from my publisher. My book cover reveal. I opened it and gasped. There I was, looking powerful in a red dress, standing tall, head high, confident. The title in bold letters. From Broken to Blessed. How I Rebuilt My Life After Betrayal. And underneath, the story of a woman who lost everything and gained herself. It's perfect, Julian said, looking over my shoulder. It's my truth, I said. And I hope it becomes someone else's roadmap to their own blessing. I posted the cover on social media with a simple caption. 2 years ago, I was broken. Today, I'm blessed. Your story doesn't end with betrayal. It begins there. Coming March 2025. The responses flooded in immediately. Women sharing their own stories, thanking me for being vulnerable, telling me they needed this. And I knew that everything I'd been through, all the pain, all the tears, all the struggle, was leading to this moment, to being able to help others find their way from broken to blessed. As midnight approached on Christmas Eve, I stood on my terrace one more time, looking out at Atlanta.
My city.
The place where I'd been broken and rebuilt, where I'd lost everything and gained more than I'd ever imagined. Thank you, I whispered to the universe, to God, to whatever force had guided me through the darkness. Thank you for breaking me so I could be rebuilt stronger. Thank you for the betrayal that set me free. Thank you for the pain that taught me my worth. Thank you for every moment that led me here. Julian came up behind me, wrapped his arms around me. What are you thinking about? He asked. How far I've come, I said. And how grateful I am for every step of the journey, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones. You're remarkable, he said. You know that. I'm learning, I smiled. Finally learning. As the clock struck midnight, marking the beginning of Christmas Day, I made a promise to myself. A promise to never again settle for less than I deserved. A promise to always choose myself first. A promise to help other women find their way from broken to blessed. Because that's what this journey had taught me. That you can survive anything. That betrayal doesn't define you. How you rise from it does. That the woman you become after you've been broken is often more powerful than the woman you were before. I'd been broken, shattered into a million pieces. But I'd gathered every fragment, every shard, every broken bit of who I'd been, and I'd rebuilt myself into something new, something stronger, something beautiful. From broken to blessed. That was my story. That was my truth. That was my testimony. And as I stood there on my terrace in my home, with the man I loved, living the life I'd built with my own hands, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning.